No.
Hello, welcome to Fantasy Football Predictive Analytics with Reese Tiefertiller, Ryan McDowell. Ryan, how's it going?
Going well. Glad to get back on here with you guys. It's been a little bit. Reese had a little bit of a hiatus, but I'm glad to be back on and chatting with you guys. Always fun for sure.
Oh yeah.
So jumping right into it, there was a fantasy football expo a few weeks ago. How was that for you?
Yeah, it was great. It was the I guess it was the second expo. Of course, we missed 1 year because of COVID, of course. So this was the second one. I've gotten the chance to go to both expos. They're both up in Canton, Ohio, same location as the Hall of Fame, and put on by Bob Lung, a great member of the fantasy football community. And it was such really such an upgrade. I mean, you could tell Bob and his crew has been putting in the work over the past 2 years since the first expo. The first one was great as well, but this time just the attendance, the enthusiasm was tenfold compared to the original. So it was great to meet so many people, both other content producers, other writers and podcasters in the industry, and as well as just players, I don't want to say fans, but just players that came to the expo as well. And just so many people and some fun events set up throughout the weekend. So yeah, it was a blast.
So who'd you fanboy the most after?
Let's see. That's a good question. Probably, I'd been fortunate enough to meet a lot of people that were there. I'd met Scott Fish before, but Scott was definitely the one of the stars of the show that weekend. A lot of people wanted to meet Scott and thank him for his work in the Scott Fish Bowl and in the fantasy industry in general. Let's see. I'd met Rich Rebar before. I know you guys have had Rich on the show a couple times as well. But it was fun to hang out with him a little bit. One person I had not met and got the chance to meet and spend some time with was Matthew Friedman from FTN. So Matthew was, I think, made a last minute decision to come to the expo. So that was a surprise to me. I didn't realize he was planning on being there. It was very cool to meet him. He's definitely someone that I'm a fan of. Love to read anything that he writes, listen to any podcast that he's on. Just such a smart guy and a fun guy to hang out with. Almost had the chance to eat Waffle House with Matt Friedman as well, but we couldn't find one open, unfortunately. So missed out on that opportunity, which would have been great after his venture a few weeks ago of spending, I think 15 hours in a Waffle House.
So Reese, he had a challenge where he had to stay 24 hours in a Waffle House, but for every waffle he ate, he got to deduct an hour. So Reese says nothing because it's his metabolism. 24 waffles, like, all right, I'm done. Let's go have dessert.
Yeah. Reese eats 23 and walks out the door in a few minutes. Yeah.
Douse them in syrup so they go down easier.
Oh man, my arteries are clogging listening to you.
Yeah, I think Friedman said he ate 9, I believe. So I think he ended up saying 15 hours. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how many I would eat. I'm not sure. I'm going to try to find out either.
Oh no, you won one. You set one record. You're going to set another one too. That's just one of those things.
Yeah,
he does have his privileges.
Yes, it does.
Who's
I did. Sorry to cut you off there, Reese. I did meet another young member of the fantasy community there. Hutchinson Brown, I believe. And I know Hutchinson has his own podcast like you do, and is kind of growing his place in the fantasy industry. So it was cool to meet him. And it made me think of you, Reese, because we know each other a little bit. We've got to spend some time together over the years, and I know a lot of people thought it was certainly cool what Hutchinson is doing. I do as well. But you've got a couple books under your belt now. You've got this podcast going with some good guests plus me. So it's very cool to see you and Hutchinson and so many other young people ready to kind of take the wheel here.
So I would love to take him. That's if Mama Bear will allow him to miss school. That's the big kicker in our household. Reese like no big deal, but Mama Bear doesn't feel the same way.
But when was the expo this year?
It was 2 weekends ago.
Yeah, I think for you guys it was before school started. That was actually the week we started school, so I missed the third day of school to go to the expo. So a little bit easier to do that as a teacher, but it's still a tough decision in some ways.
Yeah, and it's a big travel for us. He and I, can you imagine me getting in a car with 16-year-old driving across, put 800, 900 miles each way? Oh man, I don't know if I could sleep in the car. No offense, son. I don't know if I could sleep in the car. And he's a good driver. I'm just saying, those road trips are a lot more grueling as a driver than you as a new driver understand.
It'd be pretty hard for me to drive on the highway for one of the first times going, 14 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
So who's
you should definitely try to make it next year though, because it was a blast.
We'll try.
Who was the most memorable person from the expo?
Wow, that's a good question. I guess I would have to go back to Scott Fish. So Scott actually flew down to my area, to Louisville, and we rode up together to the expo. So that's about a 4 or 5 hour ride from here, and was originally planning on doing that on my own. That's what I did a couple of years ago. And, it's always better to have a co-pilot with you, especially when they share so many interests and things like that. So like I said, I had gotten to meet Scott and hang out with him for, just for a few hours really last year, but to spend the whole weekend with him and to have that drive time, that road trip time, to share so many stories, both fantasy football and just life experiences. That was a great experience for me.
That's awesome.
So transitioning to more I don't want to say NFL based, but the pro game, who has stood out to you the past couple weeks of preseason?
I mean, I think we have to start with the rookies, right? It's always exciting to see these rookies finally on the field. I think I feel like the season is changing though, just the way coaches view it in general. And that was kind of starting before COVID. Obviously last year we got no preseason action at all. And I think so many organizations, groups in general are kind of using COVID as an excuse almost to make changes that maybe they were considering anyway. I think that's definitely happening with NFL teams and coaching staffs, that it had just become kind of what teams did, that weeks 2 and 3 of the preseason, that's when we saw the starters. Maybe week 3, they played almost the entire game, that dress rehearsal week. And then week 4 was basically a bunch of players that were going to get cut the next day that we hadn't heard of. And now there's just this shift that so many players that we're drafting in the first few rounds are not going to play any preseason at all, whether that's due to injury concerns or if they're just saving them for the regular season, which I can understand. We've got a shorter preseason, we've got a longer regular season. So in that aspect, I think it's a little more difficult for fantasy players to pull really pertinent info from preseason games. So, still pay attention to usage. It's interesting what's happening in Miami. We thought that was Myles Gaskin for sure. Maybe that's not the case. And again, I know we're going to talk about the rookies a little bit more, but that's always kind of the story of the preseason, getting to see those guys in action for the first time.
And to your point, even like the Rams quarterbacks, not only is Stafford not playing the preseason, neither is his backup Wolford, because they're like, hey, we don't want any bad news. And so
right.
Any more bad news.
Yeah, after Akers goes down and Henderson hurts his thumb today. But, it's just one of those things that these coaches are being extra cautious. And we as fantasy players have to make guesses. And, I think also, Ryan, I want to get your feedback, you and Reese. I think the length of the season will mean that teams, could they do load management like the NBA? Could they do things that we as fantasy players maybe get irritated about? If you're the Chiefs and you play the Raiders at home, do you really need to start all your players for the whole game? Maybe not. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it seems like there's so many uncertainties right now from a fantasy perspective, or when thinking about the schedule, because we've got 17 games now. And they're already talking about moving that to 18. We'll see how long that takes to go into effect, probably a couple more years before we've got 18 regular season games. But there's a lot of just uncertainty, like I said, about what happens, especially at the end of the season, because we've kind of grown to understand and know that week 17, we don't want meaningful fantasy games in week 17. The best teams have locked up their playoff position. They're probably not playing their starters. Even teams that have maybe are maybe locked out of the playoffs, maybe they're resting players, for draft position or whatever might be the reason for that. So now is that just going to be week 18 this year? Or is that going to be week 17 and 18? As a commissioner of fantasy leagues, it's a little bit of a tough decision. Like, when do we play these title games? Because we just don't know. And really it's going to be a wait and see situation.
What are you thinking, Reese?
Well, for your example on the Chiefs and Raiders, there's a decent chance they're not playing the entire game anyway, even if it was last season.
Yeah.
As a Broncos fan, they do that to us a lot.
But I just meant, though, in general, there's a lot of teams that's going to happen to. I do think, Ryan, when they expand, before they go to 18 games, I expect them to add one more bye week so that they've already stretched it to the NFL teams adding a bye week. But Reese, do you think, like, let's say your Broncos, are they going to load manage some of their defensive stars, during it's a long season, and Chubb and Von Miller have been dinged up a little bit, and do they try to prolong them because we've got to save them for a stretch run down the the end of the season?
That could happen only if we are losing a lot of games or we're winning a lot of games. If we're still going 4-4, I don't think we're resting starters at all, especially in our division.
That's fair. Yeah, it's a tough division.
Well, I don't think, when you talk load management from an NBA perspective, you're talking about LeBron and KD and the top stars just sitting out entire games, over that 82 game stretch. You've got back-to-back road games, something like that. They're certainly sitting out that second game. So I don't think we'll necessarily see the stars completely sit out, until that week 17 or 18. But I think, to your point, when a team gets up big, it's the fourth quarter. I do think we could see coaches pulling their starters, or at least those key players, quarterback and maybe wide receivers, before the game's over. And even in the biggest blowouts over the past few years, that's really not something we ever see.
Right. And even Sunday to Thursday, which I think should be what sets up the next week's bye. I think they should figure that. I could see if you have a Sunday game that's kind of a chump game, and then you have a big game on Thursday night, teams messing around with that a little bit.
I think they're going to have to, really.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, this is just a thought. Whatever the injury percentage is, X percent. Now we're adding
Mhm.
1/16 of a game, so 7%, 6.7%, 7% to that risk index. And people could say what they want, but I think you play more football, you have a higher chance of getting hurt. And so,
Sure.
what I'm saying, where those would be preseason games that they wouldn't play.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we've tried to focus so much on the positive that we're going to have more 1,000-yard rushers or receivers, or records are going to be broken because these players are playing more games. But the injuries and potentially sitting out, as we've been talking about, those are things we should probably be talking about and considering even more.
Yeah, I just meant you have an early bye. Some of those teams have like week 4, week 5 bye week, and then they have to play 12 straight weeks or whatever. I mean, that's rough.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you mentioned KD and LeBron sitting out for entire games. And basketball's not as physical of a sport and does not take as much toll on your body. And that's why you see NBA players playing so long. Don't get mad at me, Tom Brady. But but you could also see people's careers not being as long because of the short, elongated season.
Yeah, but you could see, you mentioned Brady. I mean, do you think he's going to play all of that second Falcons game, whatever week that is? I mean, or are they just going to bring in good old Blaine Gabbert, hand it off to Fournette? I don't know. I just think we're going to see more Gabbert, and us in the fantasy world have to be able to compensate.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, I guess what we do have with this NBA comparison, what we do have going for us is it's still 17 games. Every game matters. Teams are going to make or miss the playoffs by a half a game, right? Basically. So, you're not talking about an 82 game NBA schedule where you can miss a few, take off a few, and ultimately it doesn't matter too much. So that's the good news if we're rooting for these players to play as much as they can.
I hear you.
You mentioned the rookies a little bit when talking about how the preseason's gone. Which rookie quarterback has impressed you the most?
I mean, it's got to be Zach Wilson for me. I have not seen every preseason game. I have at least seen bits and pieces of every rookie quarterback or some clips. I've still got some homework to do to catch up on full games, but my goodness, Zach Wilson was the one taking he was just treated as kind of the leftovers, right? I mean, it was Wilson and Mac Jones. Those two guys were getting grouped together in rookie drafts where, I mean, Trevor Lawrence was the clear number one. Then it was take your pick between Trey Lance and Justin Fields, although both of those guys were picked behind Zach Wilson. Both Fields and Lance are also the ones who we're not sure when they're going to start. They've got more competition, where Wilson is basically being handed the job. And I don't know. It's obviously still very early, still too early, but it feels a little foolish to just have overlooked Zach Wilson this entire offseason.
I'm with you. Now, I do have a loaded question for you, Ryan. This Zach Wilson love, it wouldn't have anything to do with your admiration of Corey Davis, would it?
Oh, you've got the wrong guy here. No, I mean, Corey Davis was impressive as well this weekend. Yeah. No, I've been a Corey Davis doubter, honestly, and I know you know that. Or at least recently I have been. It was good to see him turn it around last year, but there's always questions and concerns when a wide receiver moves to a new team. Is he going to be able to make that adjustment, especially when, we essentially didn't see Davis really have success until he was the wide receiver 2 on his team. So honestly, I think whether it's Elijah Moore or whoever it might be, kind of becoming the top target in that offense could still be, big picture, a good thing for Davis.
And it could be a good old Crowder, right? I mean, who knows?
Yeah,
I mean, I think Zach Wilson is a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think
Well, Crowder's another one of those guys that's always underrated. We always forget about him. It looked like he wasn't even going to make that roster earlier in the offseason. So the new contract for him, or the adjustment there, keeps him with the Jets, and suddenly they've got a pretty decent wide receiver core. You spend a day 2 pick on Moore, you overpay Corey Davis, and now you've got a decent trio.
However it falls.
Yeah.
Almost reminds me of the Broncos, who are Jets and Broncos are both like 4 or 5 deep of decent receivers, but not clear number ones that have emerged yet.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I still feel, and I know fantasy players feel like there's more upside with the Broncos. I mean, definitely Sutton and Judy, but even KJ Hamler, and he's had a good preseason as well. So I don't know. I almost feel like Sutton and Judy might be kind of a cancel out situation, that they hurt each other more than help each other. But Reese, I know you know that team better than I do. Maybe you've got some insight on who to target there.
Target neither, because I don't trust either of the quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think each receiver will be quarterback dependent. I think it's, Locke has his favorite and Teddy has his, and I think it's kind of like the Saints. Is it Callaway or Traquan? I think it depends on who's that quarterback, because I would want no part of Traquan with Taysom Hill. Yeah, I don't want the threat with Taysom Hill. But
yeah, that's fair. I mean, we had a good conversation about the Broncos and the quarterback battle on the DLF Dynasty podcast recently, and I mean, if you just look to last year, of course, Teddy Bridgewater kind of gets a bad rap as just basically being an average quarterback, and I get that, but I mean, he produced 3 guys who were top 30 wide receivers last year, and now he's got at least a couple of nice talents, plus Noah Fant. So, but it also seems like he's behind in that quarterback race. But yeah, Reese, I mean, ultimately, I'm with you that I don't see either of those guys, leading the Broncos to the playoffs, honestly. And it feels like they're in a tough spot. They've got some talent on offense. Their defense is still pretty strong. They're going to win just enough games to get them out of the Spencer Rattler conversation or the Sam Howell conversation. And then it's going to be another offseason of they can't draft a top rookie. And then what? So, do they overpay for a free agent? Do they make a big trade? I don't know. At some point, they've got to figure it out, because Locke and Teddy are not the long-term answers for sure.
Yeah, you saw him light up, because I know the 2 words he's going to say.
Deshaun Watson.
I thought you were going to say Aaron Rodgers, but
I knew you thought I was going to say that.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Well, I mean, but both of those guys, I mean, here's what we know about both. They'll both be available, right? This time next year or as early as February or March, they're both going to be available. At least we think Watson will be. We'll have to see what happens there, a wild card in so many ways. But you've got options, and I just don't even know. I mean, I kind of question the leadership there in general. I think that was easy to do when it was completely John Elway pulling the trigger. And now I know he kind of stepped aside, but he's still there. And I just, who knows what's even happening in that front office.
Yeah, I like Surtain, but there's no way I let Fields fall past me. I mean, Fields is could you imagine Fields in that division with Herbert and Mahomes? I mean, he would be putting backsides in seats, because you can always trade Teddy, right? Team like Dallas, or you can get whatever you want out, Teddy or Locke.
3rd rounder instead of a 6th rounder.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to end up being one of the biggest just head scratchers of the entire offseason for me, is that you basically had these 2 teams panic, and I would put the Carolina Panthers in there as well, with the move to get Sam Darnold. You had these 2 teams panic at the quarterback position, and I don't think either necessarily gave up a ton. I know the Broncos didn't for Teddy. The Panthers gave up more and then picked up that option on Sam Darnold. So ultimately it'll be pretty costly, but you knew there were 5 first-round quarterbacks. You knew they weren't all going top 5. They're not all going top 7 or 8. One of them is going to be there for the Broncos. One of them is going to be there for the Panthers. And it ended up that 2 of them were there. You could have had your choice. And yeah, I just don't get it. I think both of those teams are going to be regretting, especially letting Justin Fields go.
Especially with all that Fields has shown in the past. At least against Miami, not so much against Buffalo.
But still, he's still plenty of upside.
Yes, which the Broncos need at this point. So we mentioned who's been doing really well, but who has surprised you and disappointed you
this preseason?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about Gaskin earlier, and I think some of those are some of those running backs. I mean, the running back dead zone, I guess, has kind of become a trendy topic this offseason, more in redraft leagues or best ball leagues. But those guys like Gaskin and Damian Harris has been okay, but not great in my opinion. And then you've got, just the other running back kind of in that same group. I mean, I guess maybe Josh Jacobs is in there now. Running back is just so tough because you chase and then it hits a wall at some point. And now you're taking guys like that over wide receiver 2s or quarterback 1s or tight end 1s. And I just think that's not a great way to build a team, whether you're talking redraft or dynasty. So to see guys in that range kind of off to a slow start or struggle, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say that's a surprise. I guess I'm not super surprised by it, but it's kind of frustrating at the same time.
One thing that the guy who I think we've all overlooked, myself included, is James Robinson, because we pushed, but also think Carlos Hyde's a decent player, and he was underappreciated. But when we look at that, I put this out on Twitter today, Reese, that we all are so certain of what we know right now before the first game. And half of it's going to be thrown on its ear after week 1 because it's not going to play out like we thought we knew. And it's trying to discern what's signal and what's noise, And I mean, I even think of like your Broncos. Is it Gordon or Javonte? I mean, like you ask people in the fantasy community and they have strong opinions. At least I think so, Ryan. Or
I do.
What's going to happen in the Texans backfield? Or
why would you draft anybody in the Texans backfield?
If you're in a deep league, Lindsey could be your running back 1. But even Latavius, like the role of Latavius or Connor versus Edmonds, or will Mike Davis be able to do it? I mean, like we have all these questions, and what always happens, Reese and Ryan, you keep me honest here, is after week 1, we look at ourselves, we're like, what was I thinking?
We go delete this tweet.
Exactly.
Because Raquel Armstead was so much better than James Robinson before week 1, wasn't he?
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a lot of tweets lately that probably should have been deleted, but you're right. You're totally right, Jeff, that I don't know. We make these decisions, we make these calls on players, and really we have to, right? I mean, if you're drafting, you've got to make these calls, whether you're writing an article or doing a podcast or pumping it out on Twitter. You don't necessarily have to do any of those things. But no matter who you are, if you're drafting, you're making calls on players, you're making decisions, this guy versus that guy. And, ultimately we're going to be wrong on a lot of them, right? You just hope to get more right than you get wrong.
Oh yeah. But there's some situations, Reese, I'll ask you a few running backs, which ones you like best on 3 different teams. Okay. Jets. And this is for who do you want on your roster? Jets, Niners.
Does this factor in price?
Sure.
Trey Sermon.
So you want Sermon? How about on the Jets? Who do you want?
Who else available on the Jets? It's like Michael Carter, Pirine, and
Ty Johnson. T.Y. Johnson, Ty Johnson.
I'll take Michael Carter just because the other 2 aren't that great.
Johnson.
But I would not be drafting any of them, hopefully.
But how about Miami? Who do you want on Miami?
I drafted Gaskin in a draft earlier tonight, so I'm going to go with him. hopefully I am right.
But how about you, Ryan? How do you feel on those 3 teams? Hey, Ryan, who do you want on the Jets, the Niners, or the Dolphins? Ryan? Can you hear us now? Ryan?
Okay, there we go.
All right.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes. So
okay.
Ryan,
Sorry, lost your audio for a second.
You're good. Who do you want running backs, Dolphins, Jets, or Niners? Factor in price.
Are we talking just this year or long term?
Whichever you want.
Yeah, I mean that's a great. I think I'm leaning towards the 49ers in general, because that's the team, that's the offense, that's the running game I trust the most. So whether it's Trey Sermon, Raheem Mostert, of course the price on him is way down. We know why. Not only the acquisition of Trey Sermon, but also just Mostert getting up there in age and showing that he can't really stay on the field for long. So I would go with the 49ers. I still like Sermon's price, even in redraft. I've been surprised that Michael Carter of the Jets has actually been going ahead of Sermon both in redraft and dynasty. That's been a big surprise for me lately. As far as just short term or this year only, I'm still glad to take a chance on Mostert if he falls far enough. And then the other end of the spectrum, really long term, Elijah Mitchell is basically free, and that he's a nice guy to take a chance on too. So in general, I'm taking those 49ers.
Who do you want on the Dolphins? None.
Yeah, none. I mean, really, it's kind of become one of those teams I want the cheapest of. I've been worried about Gaskin all off season. He's not a guy I was willing to pay the price on, even in redraft leagues where he's going in the 5th or 6th round. I thought that was too high. And now we're, of course, hearing talk about a committee, and Malcolm Brown's there, and they bring in this late round rookie, and Savon Ahmed, I think is an underrated guy to throw a dart on in deep dynasty or in really even in deep redraft. So I'm not paying the price for Gaskin, even though that price is coming down a little bit lately.
All right. I have one deep rookie to get your opinion on. Patterson with WFT. Jaret Patterson.
Yeah, I mean, just one of these super producers at the college level, and you watch college football, and if you're not, I mean, I'm not any kind of a scout, but you watch his games from college, and it's clear that, oh my goodness, this guy can do anything he wants, and then sometimes it just gets kind of lost in the shuffle as we transition to the NFL. Maybe he's not big enough, maybe he's not fast enough, whatever it is that causes a player like that to fall to the end of the draft or to go undrafted altogether, which I believe that was the case with Patterson. But he's been impressive too. And, I love Gibson there for sure. Like pretty much everybody does at this point. But I think the depth chart is open after him. McKissick was great last year. I don't know that he's not a guy that they're looking at as a long-term option. So, when you're talking about worth a roster spot or worth a pickup in dynasty, yeah, absolutely, Jaret Patterson is.
Oh yeah, he's one of the fastest risers.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't looked in the dynasty pickup, percentage.
And then probably Ramondre Stevenson.
Yeah, but he was drafted late. But Stevenson has some steam. Some people, I won't be surprised. Ryan does the mocks every month. I won't be surprised if come September, Stevenson's drafted ahead of Sermon and ahead of Carter.
Yeah, I could see that. He's definitely moving, like you said. I think there's always that just that messiness with the Patriots backfield. You know, I mean, they still have a lot of bodies there. They have a lot of names. I mean, I don't think Sony Michel even makes the team, but James White's going to have his role, and Damon Harris is going to have his role, obviously, as well. So, but yeah, Stevenson could definitely fit into that.
Oh, you boy.
Yep. At least for 1 year, right?
Yeah. So which position battles are you looking forward to getting decided in the next couple of weeks?
I mean, again, you've got to focus on the quarterback position, and not only the rookies that we talked about earlier. I mean, I'm hoping that we just see Lance and Fields start from day one. I don't know how realistic that is at this point, but I would love to see both of them in there early on. And then the Saints. I mean, the Saints are playing as we chat here, and gosh, I just seeing what we saw from from Taysom Hill a year ago, I just hope it's not him. You know, I'm rooting for Jameis Winston for the offense sake, and I don't know. I do not have a good feel for that one at all as far as who's going to win that job. But I'm kind of afraid it might be Taysom Hill.
Yeah, but you mentioned that you want Fields to start from day one. I prefer him to start from day two, just because they play the Rams week 1. I do not want to expose, especially after the hit he took against the Bills. Dude, if that's the offensive line and they do not know to block the edge rusher, I do not want him going up against the Rams defensive line.
That is a good call. That is a good call. We could wait until maybe week 2 on that one, because yeah, you're right. The Rams defense, I mean, that Bears offensive line, you nailed it. Just, I mean, the one nasty hit he had, he took, but there were multiple shots he took, and multiple times he was chased from the pocket, just in that one game. So yeah, you're right. They've got to answer some questions there before they roll out these rookies.
49ers also have many of the same concerns about pass rush outside of week 1, who they play the Lions.
Yeah, that's going to be a heavy rush game. Like, I wouldn't start Garoppolo even if he started fantasy wise, Ryan. I mean, I just think it's going to be Sermon and Mostert, and they get Jeff Wilson back mid-season. I just think Shanahan's just going to bludgeon them with a butter knife kind of mentality.
Yeah, I think that's what they want to do. And I mean, we've seen it work in the past. It didn't work last year. Everybody got hurt. Everybody had COVID on that roster. I mean, we remember that week where they lost multiple wide receivers and didn't get any help from the league when it came to scheduling. So yeah, just one of those teams. The Chargers are another that always seem to have some tough injury luck, I guess you could say. So, but if that turns around, this team goes from one of the worst teams in the league, or a team with one of the worst records in the league last year, to a playoff contender once again.
So how many games does Cam Newton start to begin the season? And how many games before Goff gets hurt?
Yeah, Goff, who knows? I can't believe I think they picked up his contract as well. I believe that was the case. I was surprised on that one. In fact, I thought that they could try to flip Goff even after they traded for him. The Lions could. So yeah, Goff is just a wild card, but that team is playing for 2022 if not later. The Cam one is interesting. He's another guy that's had a good preseason somehow, a good training camp. But I just think about last year, and I know there were no weapons there. I know he basically had nothing to throw to, but he still pretty much has nothing to throw to. I know they brought in the 2 tight ends and signed a couple of veteran receivers, but no true difference makers, in my opinion. And we saw him, he lost the job to Jarrett Stidham multiple times. And now you've got Mac Jones back there. I think it's just basically whenever they decide Mac Jones is ready is when we see him. I'm not sure of their schedule as far as if they have a an early bye. Of course, teams always like to do that. They like to bring in the rookie after the bye, give them that extra week. So I'm not sure if that makes sense schedule-wise for them or how that'll work out. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see Mac after 5 or 6 weeks.
You mentioned flipping Goff for more. I could have seen them after acquiring their 2 first-round picks, flipping Goff for another 1 or 2, and then taking Fields, which honestly might have been the smarter move.
That's a good thought.
Yeah. Not only, like I said, not only did they not trade him, which it's hard to say if they even had that opportunity. He still has a pretty hefty contract and was not necessarily a hot asset on the trade market. But that's another team that I thought should have gone with a quarterback early in the draft, and they went another direction.
I believe it was Nick Whalen who came up with a really pretty genius concept. What that was to draft quarterbacks in the first 2 or 3 rounds every single year, or not every single year, but every couple years, like teams do with running backs, and just cycle through until you find one that works.
Right, because it's coming to a point where the quarterback contracts cost roughly a quarter of the salary cap, and you get stuck. Whereas if you hit on a 2nd round quarterback, or like the Cowboys on a 4th round quarterback, you hit, or what was it, 3rd round for Russ Wilson,
right?
You're hitting big
for 4 years.
Yeah, you're making a lot of money. All right, I have one question before we close for both of you guys. I'll kick it to Reese first, Ryan. I'll give you a chance to think about it. How many games does a healthy Fitzpatrick get before he's pulled for Heineke?
I'm going to go with 17. Ryan Fitzpatrick's he's usually been able to perform well.
Yeah.
And for the WFT, who wants to be able to compete for a playoff spot because their division is so weak, depending on your view of the Cowboys. But personally, I like a team that plays defense to get playoffs. But I could see Fitzpatrick starting all 17, and I could see him starting for only 4, depending on how bad or good he plays.
How about you, Ryan?
I'm leaning 17 as well. I think he gets the full season. He does seem like just kind of the history of his career. He's gotten a few shots like this where he was viewed and basically had earned the starting job. And those are the times he's disappointed, yes. when he's been the backup, when he's just kind of been the forgotten guy and come in to take over for Tua or for Jameis or for whoever it might've been. That's when he's kind of thrived yes. in that backup role. So that's kind of in the back of my mind, but that also feels like, maybe just a narrative that doesn't really mean anything. I like the weapons. Of course, they've added some pass catchers there in Washington, in Curtis Samuel and Dyami Brown and a couple others. We saw breakouts from Logan Thomas and Antonio Gibson last year. J.D. McKissick easily had his best year. So, and to Reese's point, the defense is one of the best in the entire league. So I think this is the best team in the NFC East as well. And I think he plays the full season, barring an injury.
But you mentioned the point of weapons. Terry McLaurin's arguably one of the best receivers Fitzpatrick's had in his career, not named Mike Evans or Brandon Marshall.
Yeah, I did a little study a while ago. It's been maybe a couple of years ago, but basically I was just noticing, I think it was during his time with Tampa Bay, that Mike Evans and I can't even remember if Godwin was there. I think Godwin was there at that point, but their receivers performed better with Fitzpatrick than they did with Jameis at that point. And I just looked at some of the key receivers that Fitzpatrick had played with over the years. And of course he's bounced around with so many teams. But every single receiver had a higher fantasy points average with Fitzpatrick than they had without him. So if you look at the split that way, I mean, we're talking about Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Devontae Parker, Brandon Marshall with the Jets, The Rams. I think he was with the Rams. We're going way back to those guys. So, but basically every single key receiver averaged more fantasy points per game with Fitzpatrick than they did with any other quarterback throughout their career.
That's crazy. So as we wrap up, I don't know if you guys got the alerts yet. Adam Trautman got carried off. And so I'm going to throw out Juwan Johnson. I think that's his name.
Yep.
Second year converted wide receiver. Did you just take Trautman in a fantasy league? Is that your look?
No, that's the look that I was high on him this year.
I was too. But all I meant,
you were not alone.
Juwan Johnson is a guy that has been getting the slow buzz down there in New Orleans. So I throw that out to whoever's listening. You need you're in deep league. You need a running, easy for me to say, tight end.
Yeah,
that has upside. I mean, I don't know what kind of upside the Saints offense is going to have, but that's a different story.
Well, I mean, I think we have to pay attention to anybody that's on the field there because, I mean, Tre'Quan Smith is fine, but I think he is what he is at this point. Who knows if we even see Michael Thomas on the field or not. Marquez Callaway, I mean, that's one of, I don't know if I get a ton right. So when I feel like I hit on one, I try to pat myself on the back a little bit. But Marquez Callaway was a guy I've been trying to chase all off season. We did the Scott Fishbowl draft back at the beginning of July. He was my last pick in that draft. So kind of had a gut feeling about him. He's playing well tonight and has had a pretty good preseason. He could be the wide receiver one, but still it's a situation of somebody's got to catch the ball. And Trautman was going to have a great opportunity. Hopefully this injury is not serious, but anytime they bring the card out, it's definitely not good news. So, Juwan Johnson, we were at we talked about Canton to start the show, and we were participating in the Kings Classic draft. Actually got to draft in the Hall of Fame, and Corey Parson, believe he is with NBC Sports Edge. We're getting late in the draft, and he selects Juwan Johnson, and there were a lot of us around the room who said, "Who?" Because this again was a couple weeks ago. So, like, who is that? Who are you drafting there? And he shot his shot, and it's looking pretty good now because even before this Trautman injury. Jeff, you're right. Johnson was kind of drawing some buzz. Maybe he's even ahead of Trautman on the depth chart. And again, if this is serious, you have to think he certainly gets his chance.
I wrote up Johnson 10 days ago as a guy to watch in deep dynasty leagues. Because Ryan will tell you, Reese, in our deep leagues, we're scratching at anything with a pulse and a heartbeat, hoping to hit something at times. And so, anyway.
Ryan, are you doing your FFA bid on that?
Doing your blind bids on
I actually, so I'm in a free agent auction right now, and I've lost I stopped paying attention to you two. I'm going to get Juwan Johnson and see if I can get him on my roster. But I also just realized I spent all my money already. So that's not going to happen, but I did get Marquez Callaway in that one, so I'll count it as a win again.
That's all a win. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Hopefully you'll end your support of Reese. Hopefully you'll come back later on in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. Always glad to talk to you guys.
Thank you.